being authentic.
All right, we're back in action, and
Right.
we are officially matching headsets here. If you're watching on video here,
Yeah. Not matching clothes yet because all I wear is black t-shirts. There's reasons for that. It's one less decision I have to make in the morning. I get joked around about it by my family and friends all the time, but it's like, dude, it's the easiest thing ever. It's like one less decision to make. So,
no doubt,
yeah, it's
no
fantastic.
doubt about it. I'm very similar. I have a couple options and a lot of repeats in the wardrobe there.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I want to jump into something real quick. For the podcast, we've been doing shorts. I try to upload, maybe 3 to 5 clips of the episode that we're running, and then I publish it out, kind of staggered throughout the week. So we're always having content thrown up onto our YouTube channel, podcast channel. What is interesting is I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've watched pretty closely. This is my let me share my screen here, entire screen.
And this is YouTube Shorts.
This is
I
just
and I
YouTube
kind of
Shorts.
feel like I know where you're heading with this one. We didn't. This was not prepped here, so this is
Yeah,
this is live.
this is live. So I'm looking at the views coming through. Typically 400. 400 is kind of our benchmark. But everything gets a view, and we keep following through here, getting views. And then what's weird is like the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 got 1 view or no views. And then I look at, well, what was the one that got the last views? This one.
Kamala Harris campaign.
The Kamala
Which goes
Harris
over.
post. So I don't know, man. Maybe it's a conspiracy of it all. I mean, this one's got a couple views. I haven't done anything with it. I scheduled it correctly, but yeah, it's like all of a sudden you talk about something controversial. I wonder if it triggered something as a suppression or shadow ban or something to that effect. We will see. I don't know if we can write YouTube and be like, "Hey, what's this about?" But just something I noticed over the last couple days that I was like, "Dude, come on, come on."
It's got to be correlated, no doubt about it. That's like really weird if it's not, because we've had some really good traction on shorts and just video views in general. We've just been posting consistently, and with consistent posting, typically you do see an uplift. Um, and now, like the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have like no views at all, like whatsoever. I think one of the views was honestly like me. So
No, I think so too. I was like, how should I see if like there will a view show up? So I mean, it could be something that got flagged or something like that. What we should do is delete the damn thing and see if it releases the account, or we leave it and see if it happens. I don't know. That's this discussion we'll have to have. But if anybody else has any recommendations on what to do, I'd be curious.
I kind of say no, dude. Just like let's just leave it and not
Yeah.
succumb to that.
Okay, that's fair.
It's
Maybe
not
we
even
can
like it
reach
was
out to
anything
support.
controversial. It's just like a
No.
general. I get the topic is a little like touchy. Obviously with a presidential, people get heated and everything there. But the topic in general is an interesting one of like, one ad account, from what it seems, is sponsoring or having text ads across different URLs. That's just clearly against Google's policy. So like, how is that even possible for that to serve? Like that's not like a controversial take. That's just like an interesting observation of how that's even possible.
And that's interesting too, because it reminds me of a LinkedIn post I saw this week that was specifically about that topic that we had talked about. I'm not sure how it got put into my feed, because there's someone I don't follow, maybe someone I follow that commented or something like that. And I decided to go into that thread and like throw out some of the questions I had with some examples, kind of like
I think you might have tagged me in that because I was following along with that thread
I
there.
did
Yeah, yeah,
tag you
yeah.
in it, and it's an interesting part, and it could be a LinkedIn strategy too. Um, not trying to be controversial, but like one way to expand your own reach within LinkedIn is to really reply thoughtfully on other posts that you are kind of knowledgeable about, and maybe going against the grain a little bit or throwing out your genuine thought about it and being open minded. That you could be wrong, of course, because I always am open minded to being corrected. But like I kind of went in there and started commenting a couple of times. I feel like on LinkedIn people play it so safe of like I just comment back like, "Oh, great post," or or agree with the post. And it's like what happened is like I went in there. I'm not trying to take credit, but I went in there and started commenting a bunch more because it only had a handful of comments and they're all kind of generic. And then we started having a dialogue back and forth with the author and maybe another person. I tagged you in it, and then all of a sudden it just spun up to have like 50 comments, and it's got a bunch more likes being pushed across because I mean they're going to spread something that has more comments on it. So one, it can help the original post. I'm then connected to that person too now. I'm like, yeah, okay, just maybe a way to genuinely participate and grow your reach is by participating in LinkedIn. I know it sounds kind of pretty straightforward, but I think it's a strategy that makes sense.
So I want to talk actually. I think that could be a good topic as like some approaches to content and some good stuff that we've seen on LinkedIn because I have some thoughts there, especially about like responding thoughtfully to comments. But
Yeah.
just following along with that thread, like I didn't see any insight into how the Harris campaign was able to pull that off. Like people clearly showed that like it's not a violation, like we called out within the episode, to sponsor and have political ads on Google search. That's not against the policy. But then I saw like clearly that you can't have multiple URLs in the same ad account. It's just not, it's against Google's policy. And like we went through an example of how like this would be, quite obvious of like how you probably shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like if I'm running a business, you could easily then start like buying keywords and then sending it against like your competitor URLs and then having like some crazy headlines or something like that. It's just an
Yeah.
obvious example. So like Google is going to want to verify, hey, you own this business. So like you could send traffic towards this business and it's the same account. Whereas if you're allowed to buy other URLs in that ad account, not buy URLs, but like direct traffic to other sites, you could start writing extremely misleading headlines and
So
damaging that other brand.
one person did bring up the comment of um, that he's saying that you can use multiple domains in an account. You just can't bid on the same keyword. That was a comment that was said. Which okay, we could look into that. I'm not 100% sure.
I mean,
But they
I've
were
been flagged for
also
that before. Like a simple example of just using, like, I'm sure teams are familiar with like Unbounce or like some landing page
mm,
builds. Sometimes you'll do like a paid media landing page, and my ad account has been flagged for that. Of like, we were testing out paid campaigns, so we weren't driving to the main site. We were driving to these paid campaigns or these paid landing pages
okay, there you
that
go.
had a slightly different URL structure, and we got flagged for it.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, that's one concept that we can. But then they also kind of goes back. Let's say that is not true that you can actually do multiple domains. He brought the concept. Well, maybe it's different keywords that they're bidding on for it all, and that wasn't brought up in the post. Like, hey, is it a specific keyword? But I would imagine it's. I mean, it is search based, so they are keyword intent. And I mean, I'm probably sure it's a broad match for like Kamala Harris, to be honest. That's one thing. These transparency apps they should tell us possibly keywords or theme or something to connect it because I think that would be helpful as well. But to your point, yeah, nobody said an exact concrete of like this is how they got away with it or this is correct. Like it was like we're still all fucking who cares? Like we don't know.
It's so wild.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It
Uh,
was cool to kind of put it out there on the LinkedIn thread and see what other people had to say because I want to be open minded. I don't know any of these people. Maybe they have the answer. I'm just looking for like educate me. But it's cool to get that kind of dialogue, back and forth on LinkedIn, which was cool to see. So we'll see.
so I think that's one of the things that we obviously mentioned was like the shorts here of like posting. So essentially, we're trying to do like one long form podcast a week on YouTube and Spotify, and then on YouTube to help like try and generate some more following and some more views. Been posting a couple like how-to videos as of late. Definitely not a ton. I think that's going to be a bit more in the works. So, we could have like long-form conversations, some how-to content, but trying to use shorts to kind of clip your episode so that people then go to your main channel is like one potential acquisition of audience and eyes on your show there. I think kind of similar concept on LinkedIn would be commenting on other people's posts because if you can leave thoughtful responses on somebody's posts, say for example that person has a significantly larger following than you do and they get some good engagement, if you post on theirs, one, you're going to make a connection with that person potentially. That could be a good connection. Two, they could probably start like commenting on your post eventually down the line, but then that will then get in front of their audience. So in a sense, if say for example you're in paid media, like a no-brainer strategy would be the larger paid media people who have followings commenting on their posts, because their audience is going to see, oh, Steve consistently leaves some like value here. Maybe I should go give him a follow. So it's a way to kind of like provide value and also like siphon an audience that if you're trying to grow like a little bit of a following, I feel like that's like a no-brainer strategy. It's like just start interacting with the top, followed accounts and top engaged accounts. You're probably going to see an uptick in your post and your content.
Yeah, I mean, even if you make a commitment, it's like exercising and anything else. Like, hey, log on to LinkedIn once a day and make a comment on a post. Or even if it's once a week, man, anything can help in that scenario. But it's funny because, dude, LinkedIn, I feel like now is just full of fucking spammers or spam comments with AI tools that are out there,
The
etc. Where
AI
like you could
bots have
totally
been unleashed.
you can see like the people that are replying back on a thread, like quite an insightful post you have about insert topic subject and a bunch of fucking garbage underneath. And
Just
you're like,
nonsense.
yeah, when I
Yeah.
get those comments, I try to delete them, or we should start trolling them. Back that's actually be fun to do. Is just troll those comments back and forth and see if they interact. Um, so that's one other thing, and I think I have a question for you on LinkedIn too. I get so many, not so many requests. I get, a handful of requests a week of people to follow or connect. But it obviously looks like a sales pitch, like like by their title or how they're doing it. Do you accept them? I typically just reject them. I'm like, whatever,
No.
dude.
If I have a request that pulls through and somebody has a message and you're like, all right, super sales, get out of here. Get out of here. But if it's a genuine, like, okay, I could tell this person wrote this out, like, no doubt, I would accept it. But yeah, the nonsense where it's like immediate, like, I don't know, scripted, they sent this to every single person they're connecting with. Yeah, I don't mess around with that. That's an immediate, like, I'm not
I
gonna
was
follow you.
thinking like maybe you should accept the spam because then it increases your follower count. Um, and then that could
True.
maybe give more weight to your profile when you post. That's the only other caveat, but I'm like, I don't know if I really want that. I mean, LinkedIn's supposed to be people like you genuinely are trying to connect with and have association with, and not like a follower account like I don't know, like an X
You
or
know what's funny
whatever.
is somebody messaged me on LinkedIn the other day, probably like a week or two ago, and like made a comment about like a post that I had on LinkedIn there. Um, and I could kind of get the vibe of like I think they were like a BDR or something like that, and like I kind of could tell that like they were potentially going to like try and sell me their software or whatever. So I didn't respond, and then they messaged me again last week with like another thought of like, hey, like that last post was like good or whatever, good value or something like that, like something along those lines. I'm like, well, dude, you haven't commented or liked a single one of my posts, so like I'm not going to interact
Yeah,
back with you there. And then they like follow, then they liked that post and then like commented on another one and followed up on. But like, dude, how are you going to reach out to somebody and say like I love your content, but like you never like or comment
I
on it?
think it's an ego play, to be honest, where you see someone that views your profile, they make this message to you. It's like, ooh, they're feeding my ego, and like I'm getting popular. And it's like, oh, I should probably reach out to them, or like it kind of softens them up. But it's like, dude, you can see through the bullshit. You really can. And that's why for a long time I never ever posted on LinkedIn. I'm like, dude, just a bunch of people trying to be their self guru, posting, promote myself, etc. I just never did it. I just every time I went on there, I was like, yeah, I don't really like to interact with the posts. And honestly, a lot of those posts that are like that, I don't interact with either because I can kind of tell they're like going to be self promotion guru
For
type
sure.
ones. Like genuine posts, like I'm like, all right, that's fine, that's cool. I'll interact with that. But I guess over time, I've realized that it's mostly I look at it as a remarketing tool for people that I have genuinely worked with in the past. That's really where I see people reaching out to me. Past clients that, they're active on there. They see a post from me once in a while. And they're like, "Oh, hey, I remember Steve. We did that SEO project. I got to reach out. I got this, opportunity that I'm thinking of." So it's like a warm referral. Actually, I didn't even tell you. I got a warm referral from a client that I worked with maybe like a year ago. They had reached out, said, "Hey, I'm working with this person, just seeing if you guys can, possibly help with this." And so we've had some conversations about it, which is cool, and it led to an opportunity for us to pitch. It's kind of like a semi-warm lead, um, and it honestly came through LinkedIn. So I think that's the value of whenever I guess there's 2 points. Anybody that you're working with, like clients, especially in the agency world, dude, say you're at an agency and you're early on in your career, even not, and you get an account that's signed up, or not even maybe it's a sales account from that point. At any point we start working with them in BD or actual client, to go through and connect with them on LinkedIn. I have been surprised where I haven't done that in the past, but then down the line, a year later, you put something out there and it nurtures back in, and you're like, oh, okay, these people I didn't work with in a year. So it's like connect with anybody that you reach out to and work with, because that becomes like your remarketing network that you could go off of.
I like the remarketing piece. I like the framing of that. That literally, I told you about it. This happened to me the end of last week. I had somebody that reached out to me and said, "Dude, just been following like a bunch of your content and your post on LinkedIn," and then reached out and we got a paid audit out of it. And then that paid audit might turn into some like ongoing paid and SEO services and everything just from posting on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, that's
I
an
really like
interesting
the
one because I'm always curious, like where that individual initially saw you. Was it like LinkedIn or the podcast? Like, how did they kind of get into
who
that
knows.
network?
Also said they
But
he listens to the pod, which was sick to hear. Um,
yeah,
and I think that's another benefit. Like I think that's a really cool feature of LinkedIn. I think it probably applies to like most platforms at this point as well. But if you like a post, like if I like your post is going to get shared to my network, and vice versa. Or if
hmm,
like I comment on your post, like there's just a lot of like cross contamination between networks there. So so that's also something to kind of take into consideration as well, as like the types of content that you are engaging with. Like if you like something, your network is going to see that. So maybe be a little thoughtful with like what you actually like and comment on. Um, just in general, there, I don't know, probably a good rule of thumb. But that's something that's really cool. Is like if you just post and some people start like engaging with your content, you're actually getting in front of their audience. It's not just your audience itself. So kind of like a prospecting approach there, where like if they have some good quality members in their audience and they like your content, well, now you just got in front of a whole new audience that like you weren't connected with.
yeah, I think it's a valid point, and like, I don't know, maybe we mentioned it in the last podcast or not, but like, even doing this podcast, um, I it's not even feel like I'm doing a podcast anymore. It's like, hey, I'm just catching up with Trevor, and
Same. Yeah,
it's just being
same.
very genuine. Like, dude, we barely talk about what we want to talk about before we hit the record button. Sometimes you're like, dude, just hit record. Let's just see what
That's
happens.
what we did today. There was no agenda for this pod here,
Yeah, I
really.
have no idea if this is going to be good or there are going to be some great moments out of it. But it's like, hey, I'm just catching up with Trevor this week about like, hey, what's going on personally or professionally or whatever. And I feel like even if you don't have someone like a Trevor in your life that you can catch up with, you even doing like a self-recorded like thought, just mentally talking about different topics that are out there, talking to yourself, in an articulate way of that could be a way you could start your own podcast without having another person on there. Just dropping those notes out there for the world.
Content, or I couldn't agree more. Like content and the podcast in specific, it's like it forces you to stay up to date on industry shit and like to know what's going on. Because I know like Steve's going to come with some like cool topic or something that he's been testing as of late. Like you kind of have to have something that you're going to talk about in your content or your podcast. So if you have that and then you're going to post that to the public, it's kind of like an accountability system where you have to stay up to date with industry trends or like look for some cool stuff that's going on. Otherwise, like you're
That's
just
true.
going to have like nonsense that you're going to be talking about in the podcast and like no actual value that you're going to bring to the table. So I feel like it kind of like it's great to catch up, and then it's also keeps you on your toes of like you gotta have a pulse on the industry.
Yeah, I guess when I'm looking at industry news or I'm doing something for a client, the back of my mind was like, "Oh, I'm going to make this as a comment or a note. Like, we should talk about this on
Yeah,
maybe the next podcast because I think it is very relevant." And just kind of that ideation.
I do. I do have one thing that I wanted to mention now that we're talking
Yeah.
here. But before that, the one thing that I will say on LinkedIn, and I'd be curious like your thoughts. So I don't know, maybe like a year ago or so in that general range, I went pretty hard with LinkedIn posting, where I was posting like I don't know, almost every day of the week, like Monday
Hmm.
through Friday for the most part, pretty consistently there. And it is difficult to post that amount of volume just in general. It's difficult to do, and then also it's tough to post that amount of content when you feel like it's valuable. And I kind of felt in that position. I'm like, dude, I'm kind of posting sometimes for the sake of posting.
Yeah.
And when I took a step back and I'm thinking like people who do that, I don't like their content that much, like I just really don't. And I saw somebody make a post on LinkedIn and he's like, I only post like once a month max, but it's a banger of a post. It's like there's actual value here and like you're going to get something from this piece of content. And the algorithm doesn't really care how frequently you're posting. I've kind of found in mine,
Mm.
if I'm posting like once or twice a week, I'm pretty good. I felt like when I've gotten past 2 posts a week, it's a stretch to get like an actual value out of it. It's quite time
It's
consuming, but I
diluted.
kind of feel like you're spamming your timeline and the people that you follow of like, dude, like that wasn't a great post. Like
Dude,
I'm
so
not going to
think
interact
about
with it.
remarketing, right? It's your frequency that you're kind of oversaturating your market in that sense from your kind of remarketing kind of analogy that I've been making. So, no, I'm on the same page where don't post every day. I don't think that's going to go well.
No.
Post when you just have something. And if you don't, if it's been a while and you don't have a really heavy banger of a topic, I love throwing out a meme out there and like just a short post, like more of a comedic kind of feel. Like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like break the internet with this post of like, yo, you're gonna have the craziest conversion rate if you do this, or
Yep.
I found this SEO hack or paid media hack. Like literally, I posted a meme of like I don't know, a mom and a kid on a freaking roller coaster, and the kid's like terrified, the mom's happy, and I'm like, hey, I figure all SEOs can relate to this when a Google algorithm update happens. And that's it. I didn't put anything else out there of like what's going on with the update, anything. And it's like, hey, it went out. I mean, it got some views, but I'm not looking to, post, get a bunch of traction. But it's like kind of a subtle way of throwing some mindless post out there. I don't know. I love humor in that sense
Totally.
because I don't see a lot of humor on LinkedIn.
Yeah, plus it
Um,
gives like your personality out there. Like, all right, this is like a real dude here, like an actual real person.
Yeah, if you haven't got an animated GIF from me, then we are not connected because I will send animated GIFs to clients, sales prospects, a lot on the internal Slack threads. It's funny. I actually had a client reach out to us and they're like, "Hey, do you guys do? We're looking to do some LinkedIn ads." This is what I was telling you about, and I was like, "I have a pretty good relationship." I'm like, "Ricardo, we got to send back the animated GIF from what is it? Will Ferrell and what's his name? Step Brothers, right? Yeah, Step Brothers. He's like, yep, that gift. I'm like, that's what I need to send back.
That's good stuff.
I think in gifts sometimes, and
That's good stuff.
yeah.
Because I also think too, like like I heard an interview recently with like Gary Vee, and he was talking about his approach to social and his strategy, and it's basically just constantly testing. But if you like follow Gary and just like hear him talk, he's literally posting probably 10 times a day across LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram stories, Facebook, Pinterest, Snapchat. It's like, dude, at a certain point, like you gotta just be throwing nonsense out there, and it's just a pure brand awareness play.
Well,
Like some are gonna land and go viral, but the vast majority aren't. And it's like, dude, I get the approach, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know. I just wouldn't want
I
to be
think
in that
people.
that
I think
position.
so. I think people follow him because they have that expectation that he's going to
Yeah,
post
that's
a
true.
lot,
That's a valid point.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what people like, and that's what he likes. I was actually listening to podcast. I think it was Huberman and Rogan lately, and they were talking about when you're putting out content and doing your content, like if you're just doing what you do and you're not trying to like force things, and that's what catches on. Like just keep doing that. because then it gets changed and you try to like appease the masses because you think you should be doing this because you got popular, etc. But I could see like within Gary's maybe this is something he generally likes to do. It's just like, hey, I'm putting everything out there, constantly doing a dump, and people like it, and so that's the expectation that they have.
That's valid.
If he pulled back and only did like once a week post, you'd be like, I don't know if I'm gonna follow him anymore.
Yeah.
Potentially because you like the volume behind it. So yeah, a little counterpoint on that one.
No, I totally agree. I think that's super valid. I'm just thinking from like my vantage point, like I would much rather be in a pocket of 2 to 3 posts a week that are valuable, that actually brings in business. And no shade on Gary, like not saying like, his posting doesn't bring in business because it clearly does, but I don't know. There's definitely something to like uh, what your, I don't know, what your preferences are there and like how you'd want to have your brand be perceived out there in the marketplace. And just feel like with such an abundance, it's, you're going to take a hit on quality. The other thing too that I feel like I'm getting a little annoyed with, I will say, is um, like the templatization of social posts. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple people that I follow, and it's just like, dude, I know you have 7 like frameworks for social posting that are templates, and it's just like bop, 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 bop. All right, here's the next week. We're going to switch these 2 words out. Cool, there's the post. And it's just like the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, again, if it works, great. I'm not trying to throw shade here, but I don't know. I just follow a lot. I would just prefer to be a bit more, I don't know, genuine.
Yeah.
Like again, I'm not trying to throw shade there, but I kind of feel like if you have like, hey, here's my spin wheel, and here's 7, templates that I have, and then I switch out these hook lines, and these are the. It's just not genuine. That just feels like such like a little schemy like thing to do. And again, not trying to like throw shade there. It's like, not for me.
Yeah, no, and that I think that's a of just a different value alignment that you have as a person. I think I'm very much on the same page. But there's people that just have different feelings towards like they just want to try to get that hook or and they get the marketing deal in and maybe it's just it's a different mindset, man.
Yeah,
That's all it is, and it generates a lot of business, and they're cool with that. For me, makes me feel a little I don't know, it's like a little skeeved out, maybe a little
yeah,
bit.
same here.
But that, like you said, not throwing to throw shade, it's just a different personality type on stuff. Where, um, yeah, because I'm sure people could also make a counter argument about maybe the approach that we have. It says, man, it's too slow. People don't care about that. You're not getting in front of them. The genuine thing. That's I get it. I get what you're trying to do, but you're trying to reach scale, etc. You're not going to reach your KPIs because of this, and it's like, okay, that's valid too. That's fair, But there's different ways to approach your social
No doubt.
game and your marketing, and they're all are valid at the end of the day.
And I think we can all agree it's extremely important to have a presence. Like particularly on LinkedIn, like other platforms, no doubt, but I've just seen it work for myself with consistent posting where I've gotten plenty of like previous colleagues reaching out for work or, prospects that have followed along, like the one that I mentioned previously there. Like it definitely works, so like figure out kind of what you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
no doubt about it, it works to get business.
when did LinkedIn start? Let's see.
2014, that'll be my guess.
Let's see. LinkedIn was officially launched May of 2003.
What?
But when did it get popular?
It launched in '03.
That's what it says. LinkedIn.
Dude, I thought Twitter came out in like '07, '08.
Yeah. Let's see. When did it become popular? I'm just curious. So let's see. This is an AI overview, so let's see how good this is. 2024-25, LinkedIn reached about 1 million users. 2006, they became the first major social network to achieve profitability. Okay, whatever. So 2010, they got 70 million users.
Wait,
Um,
2003. That's crazy. Okay, so
yeah,
Twitter was '06. So I was pretty close to that one.
yeah. So LinkedIn was before that, but LinkedIn wasn't. I mean, I guess. All right, 2000. So here's the timeline: like 1 million in '05, in 2010, 70 million, and then 2013, 300 million. So I mean, it's like in your early career, like this, you never had like this LinkedIn tool. My point where I was trying to get with is that what would you do if you didn't have a LinkedIn? Right? You'd probably be sending some emails, you're connecting with people, going out to dinners. It's kind of like your referral network, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. Um, and so it's really interesting to see that we have this tool as LinkedIn as that kind of curating our referral software. It's basically what it is, like a business referral software, and everybody's on there. So it's definitely very, very, very nice to have. And I don't know, maybe back in the day, um, because I guess my point I'm trying to articulate, another point I'm trying to articulate here too, is that I wonder how much Facebook or LinkedIn is added to this from a culture perspective. But tell me if I'm wrong. When you first got into the field of your professional life and you got a job, how long did you think you were going to stay at that company for?
Not long at all.
Okay. What
No,
about the
no. I
next
mean,
job? What about the
I feel
next
like
job?
I don't know. I feel like I'm a little. I'm like probably the worst person to ask that question because I'm very like change oriented. Like I've really,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So maybe not the best. So my point here is that I do feel like there might have been a culture when you get a job in a professional, you're going to be there at least 5 years potentially. Um, as you're learning the ropes, moving up, maybe even longer, man. Like maybe your second job, even longer. You're going to feel like you're going to be there. Because there's things like pensions back in the day, etc., where like there's loyalty to a company. And maybe there is a bit of a correlation where, sure, internet disrupted that because you can work all over the place, etc. But like LinkedIn is a place where like you are now connected with a lot more people, so you have the opportunity to kind of career hop. Like if someone's at a company now, um, how long do you think they're there for typically, especially in our space?
I would say like younger people, like probably like 40 and below. I don't know, 2, 3 years in that range, maybe
Yeah,
5. I feel like
I
if
would.
you pass 5 years at a company and I know you, I'm like, wow, dude, you put in some time there. Like you've been there for a
I
while.
would be wild if it's like more than 2 years, right, or 3 years. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying, where
yeah.
it just jumps. And so maybe LinkedIn is participating so you have that professional network. You're going to get headhunted out from there. You're going to get messages, etc. And maybe find different opportunities, which that's okay, especially if you're going to be in the kind of in that kind of corporate world where you do need to try to find a company that's going to provide you with awesome benefits and pay. Um, kind of what you see, but I think LinkedIn's maybe participated in that kind of culture change of jobs and loyalty,
That's really interesting
because that's
because
also
I've
another
actually,
because that's another reason too, like we like the contractor model that we use, because to keep an employee, it's hard to do, harder than ever these days. um, and it's like, man, if I'm going to invest 2 to 3 years with you and then you leave, it's like, I get it, we wish you the best. But like from a company standpoint, you're like, man, that sucks.
I have so many thoughts here because I've put a lot of thought into this, and I'd be curious to hear your opinion. But like, if you were an employer, like say for example, like C42, you wanted to like build out, and you wanted to be like a massive agency, and you wanted to have, like not massive, but like
Sure.
100 head unit, 200 place unit doing 20, 30, $50 million a year, like that type of business, and you're managing full-time employees. If you're hiring people, would you favor somebody who worked at a company for 25 years, or would you favor somebody who maybe worked for like 10 years of their career but bounced to like 4 different companies and went from like an agency, like relevant companies there? Would you favor one or the other? So somebody who went to a couple different companies and tried a couple different things, maybe like failed at their own startup, and then somebody who worked at a company for like 15 to 25 years. Would you have a preference on an employee in that scenario?
Yeah, I guess all things considered equally, I would look at their how long they've been at a company for, like that frequency in between. Um, and I think it kind of tells a story. And I think there's a couple different scenarios. I don't think it's like A or B, because I'll tell you the one that would concern me is the person that's spending a year and a half to 2 years at different agencies throughout their whole career. that one I would be a bit more concerned. Maybe they're a rock star, and that's the expectation I'm just going to have as a hire. Like,
Yeah,
hey, we got this guy for like a year and a half. He'll lead this, or guy or girl will lead this initiative, and that's kind of like my expiration date. But that's my expectations I'm setting with it. But that would be like the one concern. The person that like tried and failed as their own entrepreneur stuff and has kind of moved and kind of seen progress, I'm okay with that. That kind of shows evolution of a person that could be interesting. Um, and I guess on the other side, someone that's been like say 15 years at a company, um, at first I'd be like, okay, that's pretty interesting, but then I'd be very curious. I'm like, why are you one choosing to leave, or why left for after so long? Um, but also, there's a part of me too that I'm thinking about. It's like, well, maybe they weren't motivated to move somewhere else and hustle and get it done. So maybe I'm answering my own question that it doesn't really fucking matter, and it's really about the interview
I
and
like
what
that
they are.
answer. I
Because
like that answer.
I can play devil's advocate in both sides now that I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
I could see it from both ways, no doubt about it. Like I totally can see it from both ways, and I might be a little bit biased here. Um, I don't know. I feel like that's a huge to me, just to me, again, I know there's, nuance here and God, it depends on the person and the interview and situations like, tons of caveats there. I would prefer the person who had multiple opportunities and like multiple jobs and tried to start their own thing and failed and bounced around a bit because I feel like that shows me that like they're not afraid of change and they're, um, uh, they have like I guess propensity more so to like take risks, to try new things, to
Sure,
get
I can see that.
uncomfortable, to get
Yeah,
outside of their comfort zone. Where
yeah,
somebody who's been somewhere for 15, 20 years, it's kind of like, dude, like what I don't know. That like I
I can see that for
the
sure.
thought of me staying at one company for 20 years is like that makes no sense. There's just no way. Like there's just no way. Um so I don't know. And also too like I also think like I thought about that too, obviously being like a younger person of like, hey, I have years ahead of me in the workforce. Should I try and like stay at a company for a long period of time, bouncing around? Would that hurt somebody? But then like you look at like all the top, successful entrepreneurs out there and like really successful people. I mean, sure, that granted, there's people who stayed at a company, had a pension and had stock options and cashed out after 30 years. But like,
Yeah,
dude,
it's
look
not
at
a thing
Elon.
anymore.
He's got like 97 companies. He's bopping around all the time. Like, look at Zuckerberg. He's overseeing Facebook. He's overseeing Instagram. He's overseeing WhatsApp. He's overseeing Llama projects. He's overseeing Like, I think the ability to focus on one thing and one cut, like, I don't know. I feel like that's a little I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining that, but I feel like there's something to be said about somebody who's willing to like take some risks and like get outside of their comfort zone and I don't know, like try new things, try and like learn new things, try and learn new roles, try and learn new businesses, try and learn new products, all those things. I feel like there's something to be said there.
Yeah,
Um,
I would like to see like if someone was at a company for a while, I would like to see like an evolution of them moving up in the company or even
for sure.
lateral because I think that's almost like moving to a different job. Like, or at least for me, I would kind of look at that way. If like the same position for 10 years, yeah, I'm gonna probably look at that a little bit differently, kind of to your point. But to your original question though, if you're looking to scale this and I'm trying to hire bodies, and it's trying to go pretty mass scale. I mean, sure, those first couple initial hires, you got to be very, very particular. I feel like, but then at a certain point, man, I would just assume it's just a machine you're feeding the cog to, and you don't
Yeah.
care who the hell they are. Which is, yeah, that's that's what at least it felt like when I worked at big agencies. They didn't care who the hell they hired. I'm like, wait, who'd you hire? What is this person's qualifications?
Yeah.
I don't think they care. It's just the bottom line number at that point.
Dude, that's also where I like kind of, I don't know, I kind of empathize with people who do jump a little bit. It's like, dude, that fucking company has no loyalty to you whatsoever. You
That's
know,
they. That's
like
100% true.
managers and owners, no doubt, could be like, hey, like we really believe in this team. We really believe in you. First time that board goes on knocking and saying, what's going on with this P&L, heads are rolling and they don't care whatsoever about the past 5 years loyalty that you gave to them. So why do you then have to be loyal to yourself or
That
to
is a
them?
super valid point, right? Because you have to. You have to have loyalty both ways to make the relationship work, to share that back and forth. And I would definitely agree that, especially in our industry, I feel like, but probably most industries, that company culture of having loyalty to their employees, that shit's gone, son. They don't do,
Done.
like, your employee benefits are probably crap. Your pension, that's a joke. Like, who the hell like the
That's like
idea
not
of a
even a thing
pension,
anymore.
like, no, no, no. Like, you explain that. Like, I try to explain that to my daughter. I'm like, oh, if you work at a company for like, 20, 25 years, they'll pay you after you go away because you put into a pension fund, et cetera, back. And you're like, what? How's that even possible? Like, you mean it's like Social Security for but a company? You're like, yeah. The concept of that is crazy. And so, yeah, the
I
loyalty
wish that
doesn't
was
go
a
back way. So maybe back, I guess, to the end of it, I think maybe eventually a lot of people will just be working for themselves in this way. And I could encourage that to do so. But there are, a lot of people trying to crack down on, you know, contractor models, etc. Because, like, especially California, there's some rulings out there that you got to be careful with. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much about it. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, being able to have freedom to do what you want. Ultimately, it's going to have to be by yourself without a company
no doubt about it.
telling you what to do. But these days and age, you can do a lot of different things. And like you said, just not hustle exist. I don't think that's the right word, but like being open minded to doing a bunch of different things. It's okay. Like changing that kind of culture of what a standard 9 to 5 job looks like with a company. I think that
No
could be a
doubt.
challenge these days.
Talking about, in self-employment and, that could be a potential option. The one thing that I said that I wanted to chat with you about, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the product release for Cursor?
Was that the is that the tool that can basically code whatever you want by just
Yep.
prompting it? Yeah, I
It's like
saw some of that on X.
prompt coding. Yeah, so like
Yeah,
this like little 8-year-old girl like used Cursor and like built, I forget what she ended up building. I think it was like a website or an app or something like that. And it kind of went a little viral. I messed around with it a little bit. I haven't like done a deep dive. I'm gonna try and build something with it eventually here. I've also told you about Bubble, which is like a no code
yeah, yeah.
platform there as well. I got an idea for like a little tool that I'd like to build that I just haven't done yet. But it's really cool tool. Like you could essentially text or you could prompt your way through coding, and it seemed like the initial reviews are really positive, and they had some engineers test the product, and apparently like it really helped engineers themselves. And I could totally see that if like you're looking at like lines of code all day, it probably gets like a little dry and you could easily get stuck. Whereas if you end up like prompting your way through and getting some like ideas and some inspiration there, probably can really help take your engineering team to another level, at least like improve slightly there. But I think it's a cool tool where like you can actually prompt your way through and build, kind of like an MVP product, and you don't need to be a coder. I thought that was a really interesting use case for kind of like AIs and LLMs. Um, is this product here? And I definitely encourage you to check out like the product demo video that went like kind of viral there. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, I'd be curious on like what some of those ideas are to build. Um, what we'd want to build with that. I think that'd be kind of fun to look at and go through. But it's really interesting too because it's like you're almost just you're just using your words to generate something out of thin air. It's like, hey, I want an app that
Wild.
does this. Like that is a crazy concept, but it goes back to like my super nerdy side of things is like in Star Trek, they have a thing called the replicator, and you basically tell you what you want, and it then just makes it. Most of the times, it's like food, but it's like, hey, I need a wrench. It sounds very similar. Like, hey, I want a like my dating app idea. Like, hey, please build me a dating app, and the first thing you have to share is your first three worst attributes of you,
Love
and
that.
this thing could make it right. And you're just talking into it. I mean, sure, you're typing, but if you're using dictation, then it's the same sort of concept. So,
Plus, with like 3D printing tools, I feel like you probably could get to the point where you literally just like prompt a 3D printer to be like, "Hey, build me a wrench," and it'll just like knock it out for you.
oh yeah, because it's gonna be like AI kind of talking about like how you do that, like what is a
Yeah,
wrench? It translates
yeah.
through. Okay, gotcha. What's it for specifically? I'm gonna definitely check out the cursor thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same. I figured I'd mention that. I didn't know if you had any takes there. It just seemed like really cool as an option to like build some type of tool there. Um,
Well, if you build something, we know how to market it, right? That's the fun part. I think we've always kind of dreamed about as marketers. It's you do have some envy as far as like people that have created products. You're like, oh, that's interesting. I want to create a product because I know how to market it. But I think that's where I've always fallen short of like creating a product, like an actual like SaaS or physical product.
I'll chat with you about it offline here.
Right on.
I want to hash that a little bit more before saying this out loud here, but um, I know when we had Will Reynolds, founder of us here on the pod. If you haven't listened to that and you're this long of the episode, definitely check that one out. He was talking about how like his views to software in general about how much Sear spends on software and how with AI you could build tools and kind of like replicate certain softwares. Could totally see Cursor coming in and doing that. Um, of like, hey, like replicate whatever tool. So I'm sure there's probably going to be, I don't know, I'm kind of interested to see how like all this AI stuff and like these like no code tools or prompt to coding tools impact software businesses long term.
Yeah,
I'm
I agree.
assuming there's going to be some type of impact where, instead of like you buying Basecamp, like love Basecamp, big advocate of the platform there, but it's super simple. Like I could totally see you building like a replicated Basecamp and it's like, hey, instead of we're onboarding you to Basecamp, we're going to onboard you to collect a 42 communication tool. And then, that's essentially Basecamp, but replicated with like this tool. Could totally see that being a thing.
Yeah, no, dude, I think that's wild, and I think that's definitely going to be the future. We'll have to explore that more.
I'm
But I think it's a good spot to end this sucker.
No doubt. I was just going to say I remember I mentioned like All In podcast before.
Yeah, love them.
Chamath on there, he has a business. I think it's called 8090.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's like 8020 or 8090, something like that. But essentially the founding of the company is they will build like they're a dev team. They will you could reach out to them and say, hey, replicate Basecamp, but I want like 80% of the functionality and the features, and it's got to be cheaper. So like
Hmm.
just do that, and they'll like replicate, I don't know, Salesforce, or they'll replicate something, but they'll get you like 80% of the way there with like a lot of the other features that you just do not need, and it's just a simplified, dumbed down version. I don't know. Maybe we end up in a world in 10, 15 years where like there's no big name software players and it's just like dispersed out with like all these different custom tools. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting to mention there.
Yeah, I think we're pretty early on as far as us seeing this happen. What happens with the rest of the world, and that's where when adoption takes in, and we start seeing
Yeah.
like our brothers or parents start doing this stuff. So
Dude, I saw something so funny, and we can end it here on X, but somebody like released like some like use case for AI and was just like how like everybody's going to be doing this and like whatever's done and like this is the future and everything. And somebody just responded and like ratioed them with something like, yeah, good luck like getting my grandpa to do that, or good luck like getting my dad to do that. And it's so
exactly.
true. It's like if you're so in this AI like custom space, I don't like you could probably ask like, some of your parents out there and they have no idea what Chat GPT is,
Yeah,
let
no,
alone gonna
100%. It's a
download it and
generational
use
thing.
it.
It's going to take
Yeah,
time for it to fully adapt, and it's just going to be the other generation that comes up. That's all they know, born with it. So
for sure.
right on, man. Well, appreciate the conversation.
Let's call it there. All right, folks. Another one in the books here.
Yes, sir.